Okay, we're going to talk about the classical or the height of a Greek civilization and then the end of it in this lecture here. Now they're going to take these ideas of humanism and the ideas of mathematics and they're going to combine them into some sort of canon. That's that word there, C-A-N-O-N. That means a set of artistic laws that all artists will follow to a certain degree or try to achieve for the next 100 or 200 years. Contrapposto will be developed in statuary, and we'll be talking about the Acropolis in Athens and the Parthenon. This statue, around 480 BCE, is the earliest example known ever of something called Contrapposto, which is its stance. One leg is straight, a supporting leg. The second leg is slightly bent, which means that the hips slightly tilt. And eventually the shoulders will tilt in a contraposing or opposite opposing angle. That's what contrapposto means, okay? And that sort of makes the human or this statue here look like it's actually in mid-stride. Okay? And that is to make it even seem more human and beautiful and alive. And the absence, of course, now of the archaic smile. This is the first example, this Critios boy. Okay, that's why it's such a groundbreaking sculpture in the world of art. An artist named Polykleitos is going to take that idea and he's going to marry it or combine it with the idea of geometry from Pythagoras and Pythagorean theorem, mathematical theorems, of ratios of beauty as a mathematical premise, 2 to 3 to 4, whatever sort of things. So it's the ratio of the proportion between the forearm and how it relates to the proportion of the upper arm, which relates to how much of the length of the torso, which relates to how much of the length of the upper thigh. All of that is sort of set as an artistic law as to how long each should be in relationship to another. That's the artistic canon that he is going to develop and that all artists are going to follow, which is why this is such a groundbreaking sculpture. You'll notice here we see even more of that Contrapposto stance here. And this time we see actually a little bit of the angle of the shoulders beginning to happen. And that's that harmony of opposites. The hips tilting one way and the shoulders working in the opposite direction. The Greeks are going to take, and they're going to not only do this in stone, but they're going to cast metal or bronze sculptures with this. And they're using this type of casting process called lost wax casting. You're going to want to know these 7 steps. And I'll put up a document, or I'll hand out a document to you all for you to learn that you can study from. The first one is to build an armature. That's step 1. That's a support system. The second step is to actually sculpt the entire work in clay over the top of that skeletal structure, that armature. Put in all the details, all the fine little ribbons in the hair or whatever's there, okay? You make it all perfect. The third step is to cover it about 1/2 inch of melted wax and let that wax harden. The fourth step is you cover the entire thing, wax, sculpture, the whole thing, in whatever you're going to make the mold out of. It could be plaster, it could be today, it could be plastic polymers, acrylic polymers, it could be crushed up concrete and debris, it could be all kinds of things. Anything that'll harden and withstand a certain very high temperature. Once you've covered it in the mold making material, you drill holes in it, in the top and the bottom of the sculpture, and you let that harden and set. Then you put the entire thing, step 5, into a kiln, K-I-L-N, which is a big oven. And what happens to that wax? Well, it's going to melt, and it's going to run out the bottom. Hence the word lost wax casting. You're losing the wax in step number 5. And number 6, in the top of the sculpture mold, we have the holes drilled in there. You pour in the molten metal, and that's going to take the place of where the wax was. And then the last step, number 7, you simply break away the mold, and you're left to polish and clean the final sculpture. Okay? With metal sculpture and casting, it's all about using the least amount of material, or metal especially, because it's so heavy, it's so costly usually. So anything to get the weight out and the amount of metal used to create the sculpture, and that's why they use this process. This race warrior from about this time period, 460 BC, is lost wax casting, and it would have been done probably in parts and then welded together. Notice we've got this very natural stance. He's not any particular person, sort of like the Doré Forest wasn't a real person. He's just an ideal, the ideal of Greek beauty. The Romans later on are going to love this type of artwork, and they're going to copy it so many times that today with art historians have a difficult time, seeing which one's the copy and which one's the real Greek sculpture anymore, because it creates such a cottage industry. This is a Roman copy. And then after, let's see, the Peloponnesian War happened between Athens and Sparta. It lasted from about 430 to about 404 BCE, about 25, 26 years. And Athens is going to fall. And Sparta is going to try to unsuccessfully gain control of Greece. But anyway, it's a time of much unrest. But all the Greek city-states come together to fight the Persians in 338 against Philip II of Macedonia. And they're going to lose. But guess what? Philip II's son, Alexander, kills him, assassinates him, and assumes the control of, and he decides he's going to lead the Greeks against the Persians. He's going to win. Alexander is Alexander the Great. But during this time of unrest and sort of lots of war and famine, things are going to happen in art that are going to reflect a change in attitude. And we're going to start with this one here. This is Praxiteles' Aphrodite. It's a copy, of course, from Rome, but it's the same sculpture. This was a scandalous sculpture considered in Greece at the time. This was so scandalous in Athens they wouldn't even show it. They let some other city-state take it. Because it was the first time ever shown a female nude goddess. And she is disrobed, getting ready to go into the bath. And she is somewhat demure and covering her lower private parts. But her flesh is soft and supple and sensuous. She has a certain sensuality about her that was considered quite risque to the Greek sensibilities at the time. That's a shift from the mathematical precision of earlier. This one comes a little bit later. Lysippos, Weary Heracles. It's a copy, of course, from Rome. But you'll notice he's finished with his 12 labors, and he is looking tired. A Greek god looking tired is a very groundbreaking sort of idea for the Greeks. Here they're beginning to imbue their gods and their sculptures with more human attributes such as emotion. We see it here. I think that the Greeks were Well, I think they were getting to believe that not all the world could be made serene and beautiful through the use of rationality and math and order. That their serene, cerebral lifestyle had been challenged by all the wars that had been going on and the unrest. That's what adds this humanness to these following pieces of art. We even have dramatic, very dramatic stories being told in sculpture, like this Gaelic chieftain killing himself and his wife rather than being taken prisoner. This is a dramatic piece of Greek sculpture here, with the dynamic pose and the great story being told. Unheard of before this time period. Or these last two pieces, the seated boxer on the right and the old market woman on the left. Here we have the seated boxer. He's not a particular boxer per se, like Sam, the seated boxer, but he's just a boxer. And he's been beaten. He's got a cauliflower ear. He's not perfect anymore. There's no more physical perfection here. And that coolness that sort of hallmarks the early Greek statue and high classical Greek statuary. This is a real man that has been beaten and has, tired. And he looks even a little bit like, do I have to go back in the ring again? Kind of, he's got this look on his face like he's sort of done. His nose has been broken numerous times. And here we have age in this old market woman. Dress clings to her barely. She's wrinkled, she's aged, she's missing her teeth in this sculpture. She's a working woman. She's not a goddess or some noble official's wife. All right, this is a real person showing real age. This is the difference in late Greek sculpture. The Acropolis, all city-states in Greece had an Acropolis. That's simply a very high walled fortress, usually at the top of the city, okay? And inside the Greek Acropolis is the Parthenon, which was built by Pericles, who basically stole money out of this called the Delian League. It was a loosely knitted group of Greek city-states that put money all together, pooled their money and resources so they could fight off invaders. Sort of like a country, the country's treasury. Well, he looted it and built the Parthenon. This is an aerial view of the Acropolis, and the Parthenon is, of course, the largest temple there, and it was, of course, a temple dedicated to the city's patron goddess, Athena. Here's an artist's reconstruction of the entire temple complex. There are several temples that are part of this Acropolis. The Parthenon is just the largest. I know that there's the temple in Athena Nike is there. There's all sorts of smaller temples. Actinos and Callicrates were the architects behind this, and they used, again, the theories of Pythagoras to create that sense of order and rationality and what the Greeks considered during the classical period of the ideal beauty. It would have been painted, at least the top of the pediments and everything would have been painted. These are Doric orders that we see around the outside colonnade. Acropolis actually became later on a Roman Catholic church and a mosque, and it's also been an ammunition storage place. So it's had a very, very rich history. This is an artist's recreation of the Athena statue inside the cella of the Parthenon. This would have been her, and was stood in the same main section. You notice how large she is, and she would have been made of ivory and gold. Of course, they believe that she was melted down ages ago and used for whatever the country treasuries were needed for. Anyway, 38 feet tall. This would have been quite impressive, because you would want to have a proper statue not only for the goddess, but for your city. These are caryatids. Caryatids are simply columns that are really human figures. They're balancing on their heads. That's all. And these are in the Acropolis, and you'll see them used all over ancient Greece and Rome as well. And you'll see them later in Western European sculpture and architecture during the Gothic period.